Cities are defined by their cultures. Those cultures could entail sports or business or certainly arts and entertainment. Oklahoma City is thriving in all of these areas. But who makes that all happen? This Town OKC explores the people behind the cultures, their origins, their motivations, their challenges, and their dreams. I'm Rick Allen Lippert. I've been in this town for over 50 years with a front row seat to seeing the culture grow from a dusty bus stop on the Southern Plains to a flourishing destination. Join me as we meet the folks behind the culture on This Town OKC. Dick Pryor, thank you for joining me here in the rehearsal studio at Carpenter Square Theater.
It's great. Thanks, Rick.
By the way, This Town OKC is sponsored by Carpenter Square Theater.
Imagine that.
Imagine that. Basically, they let me store the gear in the rehearsal studio, and then I record here.
It's a good gig.
So, oral history of the people behind the culture. Cultures. You've been around a long time. My first memory of you is anchoring, I believe, on KOCO Channel 5.
I did.
You anchored the news?
Sports.
Okay. Did you ever make the jump to news?
I did, but that was at OETA.
Okay.
Yes.
I do certainly remember you from OETA. We worked together.
Right? We did.
Okay.
And Gwen?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So let's go back to KOCO.
Okay.
Let's go back before then.
Okay.
Where did you go to school?
I went to school at the University of Oklahoma. Started out as an accounting major.
Me too.
Hated it.
Me too.
Actually, before school even started, freshman year, I learned that KGOU Radio, which was a student station at the time, would let students on the air. And so I and my good friend Tim Stevenson went over, watched a couple of guys do a high school football scoreboard show on a Saturday morning. And when it was all over, they said, "Do you think you could do it?" And we looked at each other and said, "Yeah, sure." Had no idea. They said, "Great, you do it next week." And so we did it the next week. And so one thing led to another. And so I started at KGOU, later at KNOR Radio doing sports. And then from there, I wound up going to Wichita Falls, Texas, my first TV job at KFDX TV. TV3.
TV3, okay.
TV3, the NBC affiliate in Wichita Falls. I was sports director, then back to KNOR.
Sports director, first job out of college?
First job out of college, and the first time I was ever on camera was the first night I anchored the sports, the 6 and 10. But I guess they figured because I had done radio and play-by-play and talk shows, I could talk and not look too silly.
Right.
So I got the gig. And I have to say, I thank Bob Berry, Big Bob, and George Tomic. I had interned at KFOR, right, Channel 4.
KTVY.
It was KTVY at the time. But interned there, and so I have great affection for Channel 4 in Oklahoma City, which is where I've always wanted to work. Growing up is such a great station. And George Tomic and Bob Berry helped me get that job. So that was my first job, was in Wichita Falls right after the April 10th tornado there. The big tornado in Wichita Falls is when I started about 3 months later. And it was a great experience, but then came back to KNOR to help set up an all-sports station. And then went to Channel 2 in Tulsa, the NBC affiliate there, KJRH. Spent 2.5 years there, and then to KOCO.
Okay.
There you go.
So let's back up just a little bit more. Did you go to high school in Norman? Are you a Norman boy?
I am a Norman boy. Born in Norman and went to Norman High School.
Okay.
Norman Original, Norman Tigers. Sure enough.
So college at OU.
Yes.
Accounting major didn't work. Broadcasting was it.
Loved it.
And
sounded awful. I had a real Oklahoma twangy voice at the time, and fortunately, I was able to lose most of that.
Right. God, our stories are so parallel so far. Except I didn't become a sports director on TV.
So at KNOR Radio, I was there twice. I was sports director and play-by-play announcer for Norman High Sports, and we had a talk show, a nightly talk show. We did OU baseball live and talk shows, and it was a great experience to be there. Along the way, before I got into television, I also worked at what was then called KAFG in Oklahoma City, which was KTOK's FM.
Boy, I've never heard of that one.
Yes. Well, it's KJ now.
Oh, I see. Yes.
Yeah. And so I worked there as an automated station, and I ran the automation and did production commercials.
Right.
And produced those, and then also did the news and the weather and ran the automation. So I did that, and there was a period of time when I was actually working at 3 radio stations at the same time.
I can relate.
I was at KGOU, I was at KAFG, and then I was the play-by-play voice of the El Reno Indians high school basketball team on KELR, which was a daytime station in El Reno.
In El Reno, yeah.
We would do the play-by-play of the games onto a cassette tape, drop the cassette tapes off at the station after the game. They would play them the next morning, 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning.
You got to love technology.
Yeah.
Well, the limitations of technology back then. So what brought you to KOCO?
Just an opportunity. It popped up, and I loved KJRH, and I was also doing the morning drive sports with John Erling on KRMG radio in Tulsa, and had a great gig. Loved it. Loved Tulsa. But when KOCO came calling, I had an opportunity to go there, a bigger market, and an advancement opportunity. Had done a lot of great work in Tulsa covering TU. Nolan Richardson, John Cooper was the football coach, Nolan Richardson the basketball coach. We had the PGA, we had the Women's U.S. Open golf tournament, we had the Tulsa Roughnecks soccer team. It was a great time to be in Tulsa and loved it. But the opportunity to go to a new market and closer to home, actually, in Oklahoma City was a great lure.
What year did you start at KOCO?
84.
Okay.
Fall of 84.
Okay.
Fall of 84 during the football season.
Yay.
A great time for a sports guy to be joining a sports team, right?
Yeah.
In the middle of football season.
In the middle. So how long were you there?
A little over 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in that time you made the jump. No, you stayed in sports at KOCO.
I did.
Okay.
I did the whole time. And then in 1990, I moved over to OETA to begin anchoring the news.
Right.
The nightly newscast.
The nightly newscast.
The nightly newscast, yes, on OETA. And part of the reason for that was I had decided to go to law school.
Oh, that's right. I'd forgotten all about that.
I'm a lawyer.
I won't.
You're looking at me funny.
I won't hold that against you.
So I went to law school and did that. But then I had another great opportunity, and I've got to mention this, and I've got to give a shout out to my great friend, Jim Weigel, who was the general manager of the Oklahoma City 89ers baseball team. So I had just started at OETA, planning to start law school at OU in the fall. Jim called me and said, "Hey, I have an opening for public relations director. Would you join us? It's 2 months before the start of the season. Would you do it?" And I said, "Sure." Didn't have to think very long.
Right.
And wound up working for him and for Bobby Mercer. And the owner of the team at the time was Jeffrey Loria, who was just getting into baseball, and he later then purchased the Miami Marlins, won a World Series. And so we got to know a lot of great people there. And what a great gig that was, being able to have my office at All Sports Stadium, which no longer exists, out of the fairgrounds, but walking out of my office into a ballpark.
Yeah.
And smelling the popcorn and the stale beer.
Yeah.
And the grass.
Yeah, it's a boy's dream come true.
It is. It's fabulous. And so it was a great gig, and I got to do some of the games on radio there with Brian Barnhart, and then I did TV games on Channel 9 with Bobby Mercer.
Wow.
Who had been one of my childhood idols growing up, because he was from Oklahoma City and, of course, was essentially the successor to Mickey Mantle with the New York Yankees.
Right.
And Mickey, of course, was such a great icon, and Bobby was a different kind of guy, but everybody loved Bobby Mercer. And he was such a great guy to work with and to be around, and I really miss him.
So how long were you there? Until they sold?
Just a couple of years while I was still going to law school and anchoring the news.
Okay.
So there was a period of time there when it wasn't just 3 different radio stations, it was 3 jobs in a day.
Right.
So classes during the day, and in the summer I interned at a law firm. So there were days when I would work at the law firm during the day, go over to OETA, anchor the nightly news, and then go to the ballpark and do the game on the radio with Brian.
What a fun time that must have been.
Fabulous.
Oh, I'm sure. I can't imagine. I thought I was doing great by teaching on 3 different campuses on one day.
That is good.
But, oh man, that you got me beat on. We don't have the parallel law school track here. I avoided that. I thought about going to law school.
Did you?
I did. I really did. And then I thought better of it.
Well, it turned out okay.
All right.
Yeah.
I like to think so. So what then? Couple of years
with the 89ers.
You got your law degree.
Mm-hmm, got my law degree. And so I did practice law for about 10 years with a couple of... Oh, I did. While I was still anchoring the news. And then Pam Henry, the great Pam Henry, who was the news director at OETA, retired. And Bill Thrash, who was my mentor.
Oh, gosh.
We miss him so much.
We do.
Bill Thrash wanted me to be news director, to not replace her, but just to follow her. There was no replacing her.
I can hear him saying that.
Yeah. And so that was a great opportunity to become something I had never wanted to be, was a news director, but I became one.
Okay.
And still anchored the news.
Yeah.
And did that. And then because that was a full-time gig, I wound up getting away from the law practice. Yeah.
Just quick aside, do you do anything with law anymore other than read contracts that you have to sign?
No, not really. Not really.
Do you even read the whole contract before you sign it?
Scan it. A lot of it's boilerplate.
Of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
You just want to make sure they didn't slip something in that's unexpected.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not too much anymore, no.
So how long were you at OETA?
All told, from the time I started there strictly as a contract person until I left there as one of the deputy directors, 25 years.
Wow.
25 years.
Wow. I knew it was a stretch, but my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, good for you for rising to deputy directorship. That's impressive.
Right. Well, thanks.
And as I recall, budget cuts forced the nightly news program to a weekly program.
It did. It actually worked out well because the Friday night show was very well received, and we won 5 SPJ awards for third, second, or first best newscast in the state of Oklahoma, TV newscast.
Not bad.
With that Friday night show.
Not bad at all.
Yeah. So it worked out.
So what did you do between OETA and KGOU? Because you've been at KGOU now for a long time.
Right. Well, I went to Candor Public Relations for almost a year out of OETA. That was a great opportunity to learn yet another part of this biz.
Sure.
And I learned a lot there and a lot of great people. But when KGOU's job opened up, because Karen Holp, who'd been the general manager for, I think, 28 years, decided to retire, I thought I would just try for that. And it made sense because I knew the station, listened to the station, and I started at the station.
Exactly.
And I was fortunate enough to be selected for that. And so that was in 2016.
Okay. So as we're recording this, I'll say Memorial Day weekend of 2025, you've been there, what's that math? 9 years, 10 years?
8.5 years.
8.5 years.
Right.
Okay. Put you on the spot here. Do you see yourself retiring from that job?
Eventually, sure.
So let's
There's always a time to turn the page and to bring somebody else in with new ideas. When that will occur, I don't know.
So to put you on the spot again, are you still enjoying the job?
I am. It's more challenging now.
Of course.
It's very challenging because of overall the way journalism is perceived in the country, the way NPR is perceived, public broadcasting, and then also challenges for funding.
Exactly.
It's a nonprofit, and so we have to raise most of our money. We raise more than 75% of our operating revenue. We get some funding from the University of Oklahoma through the University of Oklahoma Outreach. We get some funding, only about 7%, from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which comes through a federal appropriation. And the rest of it, we have to raise.
I know I send you money every month.
Yes, you do. And we appreciate that.
I really should up that monthly donation, and I will one of these days. But I also give in full transparency, to some other public radio stations as well.
As well you should, and as I do too.
Good.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Because we want to support the idea. We want to support that as an asset.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
My radio presets on my car radio are, by and large, public radio stations.
Right.
I think I have one for the Thunder, and when my wife is in the car and the Thunder are playing. So,
well, I've been called a journalism purist, and so I gravitate toward good journalism wherever we can find it.
Right.
And there's good and bad of journalism. There are good days and bad days. Some stories are better than others, but on balance, over time, being with public broadcasting has been a great fit.
Yeah, yeah. And you've done some wonderful things through KGOU to expand that quality journalism reach to the public through events that I've attended, and I'm sure you've done others that I haven't even known about or haven't attended. I can recall one at, I believe it was the Rose State Auditorium.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that. And
we brought in David Sedaris.
Yeah.
He's an interesting guy.
Yes. I dragged my wife to that.
Yeah. KGOU has brought him here several times. I've had a chance to meet him and introduce him twice. That's been fun.
Good.
Yeah.
So what do you know? I knew he would go out into the audience and seek a contestant. Mm-hmm. And boy, as soon as I heard, I could tell when he was going to do that, my hand shot up. When he called on me, he said, why should I have you up on stage? And I said, because I'm the voice of KGOU. And I said, you're listening to KGOU 106.3 FM and Norman. And the audience went wild, like, there's the guy, that's the voice. And so I went up on stage, complimented the announcer on her voice. And then I said, back when I was taking announcing class in broadcasting, my professor would say, Lippert, from the gut.
Yeah. And
I didn't know what he was talking about. I finally learned it's from the diaphragm, from down here.
It is.
And she has good voice control.
It is. It's funny you should say that, because when I was at KAFG as an announcer, and I was just learning how to find a voice at the time, as an announcer, I'd done play-by-play, but it's a different gig when you're actually on the air like a DJ, that kind of announcing. And Lance Ferguson was the program director. His dad was Maury Ferguson, who was a legendary Oklahoma City area broadcaster and pitchman. And that's what Lance told me. He said, just speak from the gut, push up from the diaphragm, right? And drop your voice down at the end of a sentence. You'll sound more credible, and it will change your voice.
Right.
That's it. That's the extent of my TV and radio voice lesson.
Well, I'll tell you, it's easier said than done. It takes a lot of practice to really learn how to do that.
Yes.
And
and at some point it becomes you. Because I've had people say, no, that's your radio voice. Talk like you normally do. And I have to say, no, this is what I am here.
Yeah. I have trained myself to sound like this. I don't want to sound like that guy.
No. If you want to talk about the funding for public broadcasting, I think it's a challenge, because what we have is a mixture of different funding sources. And so if any one of them drops off, we're having to scramble and figure out, how do we adapt? So traditionally, individual donations from people are called membership dollars, right? That's membership. There's underwriting, which is essentially advertising.
Exactly. Yeah.
But there are certain limitations on what you can say as a public broadcasting non-commercial entity. And so it's a challenge continually to figure out how to make it all work, because underwriting may go up, it may go down, membership may be stable, but it's not growing, or maybe it does pick up, or the federal funding could go up or down, depending on how the Congress feels at any given time. And as we're recording this right now in 2025, that funding may completely go away in the near future. And so I think everybody in public television and radio is figuring out, how do we make this work? And how do we adapt? There's something kind of exciting about that in a good way, but it's also scary.
Right.
Because we could be entering into uncharted territory.
Right. And then there are those who say that it should not have any tax dollars whatsoever, and it ought to be all commercial, just like all of the other news outlets in the country. And it ought to be able to support itself, stand on its own. I'm not so sure about that.
Well, you look at other countries, and the UK is a prime example. They support their public broadcasters, the BBC, with funding a lot more significant than what we do here in the United States. And I think there is a place for that. I think it's good. And on balance, day after day, year after year, the work that NPR and PBS have done is really great work. And people can take exception to any particular story or an interview.
Of course.
But you can do that in commercial broadcasting too.
Right. Here's a story that predates you. Back in the Karen Hope days, they had come into town. The station had, I think his name was Kevin Close, who was the president of NPR at the time. There was a reception, and apparently it was a last-minute thing, and they're just scrambling to get anybody they can to come to this reception. And it happened to be at our favorite restaurant, so we went. We were available, and we went, and I got to meet him. And I got to ask the president of NPR about the response that they were getting from the public. And now, again, this was probably 20 years ago. And he said, about half of our letters say we're too liberal, and about half of them say we're too conservative. So I think we're doing the right thing.
That's about what we strive for.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons that we have so many people that have been loyal supporters, reliable supporters. They believe in the mission. They believe in the contribution that we make as a public service news organization.
Yeah.
And we appreciate that funding. We appreciate what you send us. And if you have any friends out there that might want to send, we can arrange that. But the point is that...
is it the 405-325 KGOU?
Something like that, yeah, right. And KGOU.org, click the donate button.
Oh, yeah, right. The red donate button.
The red donate button. But it's encouraging because we do have people in the public that support us in addition to businesses. Right. Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen the chart that shows all of the news entities that we might know about or might not even know about, and where they rank in terms of liberal versus conservative, factual versus bald-faced lies, and it's a kind of a bell curve. And NPR, PBS, right at the very top of the most objective, balanced journalism there is.
Consistently very close to the middle.
Yeah.
Right.
And at the top of objectivity.
Yes. Right. And Harris polling over the last several years has shown that the consistently two most loved and trusted news brands in the United States, it alternates, NPR and BBC.
Yeah.
And KGOU airs both. And I'm proud to say that.
As I travel around the country, not nearly as much as I used to, I'm always listening to the local NPR station because that's my preference. I just like listening to NPR. And I have to say, I have always preferred coming home to listen to KGOU for whatever reason. It's just, it's like a warm sweater to me.
And that's the way a lot of people feel. And so even though we broadcast across 36 counties in Oklahoma and we get into southwest Kansas and the Texas Panhandle, we cover a lot of territory.
Yeah.
We're reaching, they don't all listen, unfortunately, but we reach about 1.8 million people in the state of Oklahoma.
Right, yeah.
But in addition to that, if you go to KGOU.org, you can listen to us through streaming, and we have so many people that listen to us from anywhere in the world.
Right.
I like to call that our worldwide transmitter. And so we have Oklahomans that can catch up on what's going on back home if they're traveling, if they're visiting someone, wherever they may be, and they can stay connected. That's a large part of what we do because the local news and community connection is part of what we do in addition to the news and the music. And so we connect people with common language,
Yes.
common stories, things they can relate to. And I'm glad to be able to do that. That's how we stay connected as people.
Exactly. Yeah. I can't be more of a fan of NPR and KGOU. I mean, I can't. It's impossible. There's no room in the picture to add more admiration and respect.
And we hear you every hour. At the top of the hour.
That's right. That's right. And I've actually written my obituary, and that is, being that voice of KGOU is one of the two most precious broadcasting milestones of my career. I don't want to bore you with the other one, but boy, being that voice. And I remember the day I was teaching at OU at the time in the Gaylord College of Journalism, walking through the parking lot next to the building where the station is, and Jim Johnson, he came out of the building and saw me and stopped me and said, "Oh, I've been wanting to get in touch with you about doing our station IDs." Mm-hmm. I was speechless. All I could do was hug him. And I almost cried. So I couldn't be more proud. And I will say that I stop what I'm doing and when I'm in the car and I listen to hear me. I've heard myself thousands of times now, but because I think secretly I'm waiting for the time that's not my voice. and it gets changed without anybody telling me.
You've been doing it a long time.
Well, it's much the same feeling I have when I drive into my neighborhood. Every time I drive into my neighborhood, I think this is the day there's going to be the roadblock there, and they're going to stop and say, Mr. Lippert, there's been a mistake. You're not really allowed to live in this neighborhood.
And you should be proud also, Jim made the right call there, but then that you, Rick, are there doing it on a station that is showing very well in the ratings.
Oh, good.
And I can't really get into all the ratings, and
sure.
It varies from book to book.
Right.
But I think the fact that we are consistently in the top 15 in the Oklahoma City market, if not the top 10.
Wow, that's great.
Is a real testament to the work that a lot of people have done.
Right.
The good decisions like Jim made,
yeah,
wanting you to do the IDs, right? And that the work has gone on for so long and has paid off. And KGOU, because of so many people, and Karen Hope was so integral to that.
Yeah.
And our great staff that we have, it has really it's been a great place to work. It's been a great place to learn as a manager for me.
I'll bet.
Because I get to learn too.
Yes.
We don't have all the answers, so we learn from our staff. And there's so many people that come through there, including students, that may have an idea and try a new idea from time to time.
Right.
And listen to people, and that's part of managing too. And it's been done for a long time, and I think that's why one of the reasons why KGOU has been so successful.
Well, to date this podcast, which we're trying not to, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to break my own rule. Your most recent Manager's Minute, you congratulate the graduating seniors, mm-hmm. and you mentioned them by name, a couple of them who will be returning in the fall. Mm-hmm. And one or two who will be working this summer. Mm-hmm. And it brought a smile to my face because I remembered one summer in particular when I was in college working at then KCSC, now KUCO up at Central State. And I worked there in the summertime. And I was one, maybe two students working in the summertime. And to get to do everything at the station, I mean everything, was so valuable that when the fall came along and the returning students who maybe were even a year ahead of me, man, they were farther down on the pecking order all of a sudden because I had that leg up on them. And so as I was teaching, I would always counsel my students, if you can work a summer semester at the TV or the radio station for the college, take it because you'll be the king. You will run that place, and you'll learn things you've never encountered before.
And that is one of the ways that KGOU has supported students at the University of Oklahoma since its inception.
Exactly, yeah.
Is giving students opportunities. I can look at so many broadcasters and people outside of broadcasting who became successful, who learned skills
right
at KGOU because they were given an opportunity and some training and had a mentor that would pay attention and let you make some mistakes.
Of course, you have to.
But you make the mistakes and you learn and you get better. And it's been such a great incubator for so many young people.
Yeah. This town is full of people in high-level marketing and PR positions and even beyond, even higher than that, who got their start at KGOU or KCSC or KUCO, but college radio, college TV, got those experiences young and transferred those skills to running political campaigns or being chiefs of staff.
And those relationships.
Exactly.
The very first game that I broadcast was a Norman High School, Altus High School football game in Altus.
Oh, boy.
I was the color commentator, the analyst.
Okay.
The play-by-play announcer was Mike Betcher, who, of course, went on to become a great correspondent for ABC and NBC and CNN. And I think what a great story and what a great guy he is.
Multi-award-winning journalist.
Yes.
Who is now on faculty at the University of Oklahoma.
At Gaylord College.
Yeah.
And a multi-Emmy Award winner. And we got to know each other doing a game in Altus, Oklahoma.
Yes, back in the 80s. Yeah, it's wonderful how those kind of relationships begin and grow and foster. So I think we probably ought to wrap this up, unless you have some more great stories like that one you just told. Any wild stories of your young radio days?
Probably, but I won't talk about it.
As well.
Well, we invented a lot. We made up a lot.
Sure.
As we went along. And I've had a couple of people say, I learned from watching you. And I had to say, a very good friend told me this. I learned everything I knew about broadcasting. And another one told me I learned everything that I know about sports from watching you. And I had to tell them both, thank you. I appreciate that. I was just making it up as we went along.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's trial and error, and some things work and some things don't, but I really appreciate the compliment. Yeah. So there's a lot of great stories. It's a great life. I would tell anybody, any young person, and I'm biased, I will admit it, but I think journalism and law may very well be the best career fields to get training in. It doesn't mean you have to be a broadcaster. It doesn't mean you have to be a lawyer, right, and practice law. But great training. And I appreciate the training I've received from a lot of great people and the mentorships from people that have helped me along the way, because we're all in this together and we all are products of those teachers and those people who saw something in us and gave us a chance.
I mentioned before we started recording that Bob Dotson gave me a line that I've repeated about everything I learned on in college is now in a museum. The most beneficial college course I ever took was not in the broadcasting program. It was my senior year, my last semester, and it was a basic law class, just law. Mm-hmm. I had no intention of ever becoming a lawyer, but I had to learn about contracts and stuff like that, and that was so beneficial. Mm-hmm. And I told my students for years, I don't expect you to go into broadcasting, but these skills you're learning transfer to so many other areas. If you can just write a simple sentence, you're ahead of most people.
And speak and be reasonably coherent.
Yes. Which you have been now for over a half hour, Dick Pryor, General Manager of KGOU. I want to thank you so much for sitting down with me and talking.
Thank you, Rick. It's been great fun. And I value you and our friendship.
Thank you. Carpenter Square Theater is the sponsor of This Town OKC. It's edited by Fred O. Bishop. I'm Rick Allen Lippert. This has been a Lippert Media production.